You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Happy Tuesday. We are back and doing it. Of course, didn't happen over the weekend like I thought. I just wasn't home. Anyway, Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. We are back to doing it most of the time. I'm your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. And we are going to continue our series is talking about each position group, kind of breaking down where they stand. Today, we are going to get into the wide receivers, a very loaded group, perhaps the most loaded group on the entire roster. So, good time to get into that. So, we'll start with the established, then we'll move into the up-and-comers, and then, sorry, I just got back from a walk. Apparently, I am winded. We are going to get into then those who... the up-and-comers and then the newcomers. So that'll be the way that we're going to look at it. So let's start, obviously, with the obvious. And those are the guys that we've seen before. The most important to me, and probably to most, is not those that we saw for the bulk of last year. It's Ronnie Bell, who I have long compared to Chris Olave. I think that we started to see that in game one before his injury. He has everything that Chris Olave has. And I know a lot of people won't go that far from a national perspective, but they're not ones that get to watch him on a daily basis like we do. So the thing about Ronnie Bell is he's got the speed, he's got the elusiveness, he's got the ability to get open, he's got the ability to make a play after the catch. He provides a lot of things. He's the type of player that can make things happen for your quarterback that maybe some of the others that we've seen don't necessarily do. And that's not to impugn the others. He's just got that dynamic capability that we haven't really seen from some of the others. The only thing, when you looked at Chris Olave's stats and Ronnie Bell's stats going into last year, they were nearly identical, with the only exception being that Chris Olave was a touchdown machine. Ronnie had that stretch, I believe, in 2019. Yeah, 2019, where he just couldn't get into the end zone for whatever reason. But he proved to be the best receiver that Michigan had. I mean, even 2019, he was. And even though Michigan had Nico Collins and Donovan Peoples-Jones, Ronnie Bell was kind of the steady option. And then in 2020, he continued that. In the 2021, that half a game that we got to see him, I mean, he looked incredibly dynamic whenever he got the ball in his hands. I think it was kind of funny in the aftermath of his injury that you all of a sudden had all these pundits across college football saying Ronnie Bell was Michigan's best receiver. He was, a game breaker, all these things. And they weren't saying that before that happened. So that's Michigan gets him back. You can't understate how big that is. But it's a crowded wide receiver room, especially because last year Michigan had to make do without him. Cornelius Johnson, I still feel like he's got another gear or two that we have yet to see, right? Because he has all of the tangibles that a guy like Nico Collins had. We've seen him lay out and make big plays, but we've also seen him not, miss out on big plays. For every Ohio State play or those 2 touchdowns he had against Wisconsin, there are plenty of other options or, that you can look at and that say, all right, well, he could have done a little bit more. Spring game, I think there was that incident when he should have gone out of bounds and didn't. I think that's kind of a microcosm of Cornelius Johnson. He's got all this capability. He certainly could be a first-round type, but something seems to be holding him back. But we'll see if he steps into that role and becomes that much more of a game breaker. We'll stay with his class and talk about Mike Sainristil, who is supposed to be a multi-way player now. I do think he is going to get significant run at cornerback this year. What will that mean for his opportunities at wide receiver? I don't know. The thing about Sainristil is that we saw a lot of him really kind of coming into his own this last year. Whereas in the kind of years before, it seemed like he was dropping passes or just not being right where he needed to be. Last year, it wasn't like it was constant, but he came and made big plays when they were absolutely necessary. The Nebraska game sticks out with one downfield catch that he made. I'm still salty about it because I'm sitting there locking in on him on the sidelines with my camera, and my camera decides it's just not going to execute. It's just like, yeah, no, I'm not going to do it. Sorry. And I had him in focus and everything. It's still salty about that. But, between Michigan State game, that game, he had some really big catches, and it really seemed like he was starting to really look like that player that we all thought he had the capability of being, based off of what we heard when he was an early enrollee in 2019. So I think that it'll be interesting to see how he does playing both sides, because that's a difficult task, and we haven't really seen a lot of guys throughout college football in recent years be dynamic players on both sides of the ball. But Mike Sainristil certainly has that capability. Roman Wilson is another one that we obviously should talk about, because we got to see a little bit in spurts from him. His injury kind of held him back last year, but with Roman Wilson having the speed that he has and that type of capability to make big plays, like we saw it against Wisconsin. We saw his ability to make big catches against Penn State, those 2 touchdowns, the Ohio State long catch, though that was negated by an interception on the next play or the next throw or whatever. But he's really got he's the type of guy that could really, really break things down this next year should he continue his ascent. And I think that's a pretty good place to have. I feel like I'm forgetting someone out of the established. That's where we're at. That's because I've got guys I want to talk about in the next segment, but I want to make sure that I've covered everybody here. That's of those classes of people that we have seen with regularity. Let's see, who am I missing? Am I missing anyone from that list before getting into? AJ Henning is one that I'm going to do in the up and coming. He's the one that I was thinking of. So we're going to cover a couple of the other guys here momentarily. But before we do, listen, I love brownies, but you know what I love more? Brownie batter. Sometimes I eat half the batter just while I'm making the brownies. Imagine if you could lick that brownie spatula and clean and get some protein in. You're in luck, because Built has a new creation, and this one's better than ever. The Brownie Batter Puff. That you heard me right. This puff takes protein bars to a whole new level, and they're available right now on Built.com. Have you tried the Built Puffs yet? I'm not sure what you're waiting for. Built Puffs, rather, are a chocolate-covered marshmallow protein bar. That's right. Delicious flavored marshmallow covered in 100% real chocolate. 140 calories, 17 grams of protein, and only 7 grams of sugar. Brownie Batter Puffs are the perfect pick-me-up for any day. All Built Puffs are covered in 100% real chocolate. That means with Built, you can eat healthy and actually enjoy doing it. And they're made of collagen protein, which means that your body absorbs more efficiently and provides tons of health benefits. The Brownie Batter Puffs will have you completely forgetting that you're eating a protein bar. No need to pinch yourself. This is real life. So go to Built.com to get Brownie Batter Puffs now. Go to Built.com, use the promo code LOCK15 to get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCK15 for 15% off of... That's Built.com. All right, our partners at BetOnline continue to be the number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest odds and news and sports developments, including this year's basketball playoffs, Major League Baseball scores, fights, and even next season's NFL futures. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, from live betting, playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today. Use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, I feel like segment 2 isn't going to be quite as long as segment 1, just based off of the fact that I feel like we got the bulk of it out of the way. And I feel like it's pretty obvious who those guys are going to be. But there's obviously a couple that I think we can get really excited about that we've seen already as part of the roster and on campus and everything. Keeping in mind, again, Michigan only lost one wide receiver to the draft, or not, well, just to NFL out of eligibility, and Dalen Baldwin being it. So you lose a Dalen Baldwin, you gain Ronnie Bell back, you've got all these other guys that are going to be stepping up. Perhaps these next two are maybe the most important aside from Ronnie Bell. Let's start with A.J. Henning. A.J. Henning really started to kind of come on as the year went on, and he isn't your traditional downfield guy. I mean, obviously, he wants to be considered more of a Deebo Samuel type guy who can be a end-around running back type. Obviously, Roman Wilson also has that capability. He's the type of guy that can play inside, he can play outside, he can kind of do a little bit of everything, as evidenced by him being a TikTok star. He's a good follow if you don't follow him on TikTok, if you're into that sort of thing. But AJ, he's still scratching his potential. And that touchdown he had against Ohio State being a high point, obviously. But I mean, we've seen him do that in a couple other games. And I think with having all these wide receivers, as well as, that touchdown was spawned by Donovan Edwards just being there in the backfield. Ohio State gave so much attention to him that AJ was able to just make that run. Eric All had that big block to seal it, seal the defender inside. But he's got more capability than that. And I think that if we can see him continue to make that type of progress, to take those types of steps, that he really could be one of those weapons that really takes yet another step forward. But I think the one that people should be most excited about out of all of them, aside from Ronnie Bell, and maybe even more than Ronnie Bell, is Andrel Anthony. And you keep in mind that this was Harbaugh's favorite, not just favorite receiver, but favorite player in the 2021 class. He's a guy who we finally kind of got to see his potential in the Michigan State game with 2 touchdowns, one just being a pure speed play where, he gets that underneath pass and takes it 90 yards for a touchdown, and then one where he just goes up and makes a play. Again, Nico Collins type in that sense, but I think that he has the potential to be more dynamic. And even though he was a 3-star, he's the type of guy that, Michigan was all in on him. He was Harbaugh's favorite recruit, and they made sure that they went out and got him. And the thing that's interesting about some of these guys that we're talking about, Ronnie Bell, Andrel Anthony, these are guys that are, were also dynamic basketball players. And we're seeing how that can translate to the field from basketball to being a wide receiver, that athleticism, that type of thing. So I think that it could be really interesting to see how much he is able to really take the reins, move forward, become maybe that guy, become the potential he could become the number one guy, because, Ronnie Bell, he might be the number one option, but he's, you think of him as being like a more dynamic Wes Welker, Danny Amendola type, in that sense that he's mostly going to be a slot type receiver. Yeah, you can play outside, you can move him around, but you could really make Andrel your number one type guy. You could have Ronnie Bell, and you could have Andrel and Cornelius on the outside, Ronnie Bell in the slot, and then you could have A.J. Henning and or Roman Wilson being in the backfield. Or if you go 4 wide, you can put another one in the slot. There's just so many options with some of these guys. I think that Michigan has the one of the deeper wide receiver rooms that's established in the country. So it'll be interesting to see how they work out those options. Now, before we get into the freshmen, which are also another key component, we have to obviously talk about Christian Dixon, who we didn't really get to see last year. But he seemed like he kind of figured some things out the offseason. Made some strides in the spring game that we were able to see. How much that will translate to the field, we'll have to find out, because he's a super fast guy. He's the type of guy that, again, Michigan's really been prioritizing. He was right in the same vein speed-wise as Xavier Worthy, when you committed right before Xavier Worthy did. but didn't seem like he had things figured out. Comes from a powerhouse high school at Mater Dei. So he's the type of player that also, if he can get things figured out, he could be in the equation. But he might be a year away, especially with all these other guys that might be just kind of primed and ready to go. We'll find out. All right, let's continue on. I feel like even though this is such a deep room, I think because it is so deep, I'm not spending as much time talking about everybody. But with that in mind, we're going to move on to the freshmen and talk about what they can potentially contribute in year one and the overall outlook of the room here momentarily. But this episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts that you need. Why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing only the brands that their warehouse happens to carry? You have the computers and with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. Save time and money when using Rock Auto. Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for 20 years plus. Rock Auto prices are reliably low for every customer. They have everything you need from brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, even new carpet. So go and explore their easy-to-use website today to find the solution for your auto parts needs. Go to rockauto.com right now, see all the parts available for your car or truck. Right locked on in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. Might be a Tuesday, but it feels like a Monday to me. Yesterday just kind of didn't exist. We're going to keep this a little short, again, because it's almost like we could make a week's worth of shows out of the wide receivers. Maybe we'll end up doing that come the summer. But for now, we're going to keep it a little bit short. I'm also going to a concert tonight, so I'm super excited. That's not why we're keeping it short, but I am super excited to go see Deftones. Really getting into my late 90s, early 2000s music here. Before I start going and seeing Justin Bieber and Machine Gun Kelly and all the that type. It's been a very interesting concert year because I've seen Seven Dust, I saw Thornhill, I saw Dua Lipa, I saw James Arthur. It's just such a mix. Anyhow, all right, let's talk about the freshmen because they certainly could be year one guys. Obviously, the one I'm most excited about is Darrius Clemons. He's the guy that I'm most excited about out of everybody in the class. And I know Michigan got a 5-star in Will Johnson. Derek Moore could be an early contributor on the defensive line, but it's Darrius Clemons who has me kind of salivating. We really got to see that with his diving catch in the spring game. He really kind of came in and looked the part right away. He is another Nico Collins type that, that's straight out of Jim Harbaugh's mouth. Well, when he signed, said like he basically is the second coming of Nico Collins. Again, tall, possession receiver type, but he's fast. And it was such a coup for Michigan to be able to get this guy because, he certainly could have gone any number of places. Wasn't really in the conversation until late. Michigan got a couple guys in the 2021 or 2022 recruiting class that were those late decisions, and he's one of them. And I think that he's the one I've got my eye on the most out of the three. And I think that with his body type and everything, I think that he could, because even though Michigan has all these different guys, has all these different players that can make an early impact, or make it not an early impact, but a big impact at wide receiver, it just seems like it's been a little while since they've had a freshman kind of come out of nowhere and do it. And I'm not talking about like when it was Donovan Peoples-Jones and Tariq Black. That was out of necessity. They lost their entire receiving core from the year before, for the most part. Kakoa Crawford was still around, but I think that this could be one of those situations where, it's a guy that just hits the ground running. He's already got the body type. By the time the season comes, he'll have gone through an entire season of he's gone through winter conditioning, he's gone through summer conditioning. That's the great thing about what they have with all three receivers having already been on campus. So that's an exciting aspect. So then beyond that, you've still got Amorion Walker and Tyler Morris. And we got to see Walker in the spring game, and he obviously had a couple big catches. He looks like he needs a little bit more conditioning. Jim Harbaugh said afterwards that summer conditioning should get him to where he needs to be. A really, really tall guy, Louisiana-based receiver, and obviously a Notre Dame flip. But those two are ones that have been kind of mentioned as guys that can make an early impact. And I think the question with Tyler Morris is because, he tore his ACL as well, I believe. I think it was his ACL, but he's still recovering from that, so we haven't really gotten to see him yet. But Steve Wiltfong had said, listen, if he didn't get injured, he would have been much higher ranked. And he's got the familiarity with J.J. McCarthy because they played at the Nazareth Academy together. So it'll be interesting to see if he takes that step. He might be a year away, because of his injury mixed with just a loaded receiver room, Michigan will certainly lose some of these guys going into 2023. But ultimately, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if any of the three freshmen got involved a lot in year one. This is kind of why it's ironic that Josh Gaddis is gone, because he's long wanted to have a receiver room that had this level of depth. And to me, it seems kind of crazy, especially when you think about when Harbaugh first took over, it was two guys, really. I mean, yeah, you had a couple other guys, and obviously you had Jake Butt, but really it was Amara Darboh and J. Hugh Chesson, and that was it. And now think about all of the options. If one guy's down, you're just kind of like, well, there's another guy with his same skill set you can plug in one way or another. Now, it depends on what guy it is, because obviously, even though you look at Ronnie Bell and then kind of similar skill sets, AJ Henning, Roman Wilson, but they're still not quite on that same par of what we've seen from Ronnie Bell per se. So it's a little bit different. Depends on who it is, but at least you know that unless you lose half the core, you're probably in a good spot, probably in a good space. This is the position group I feel most confident in, but you just hope that it isn't the embarrassment of riches is utilized well. But it is different than for than running back, because when running back, generally you're only going to have one on the field. This is a situation where you have multiple guys. So the question is, how much are they going to be able to be relied upon? How much will they help out the quarterback, whoever the quarterback is? If Michigan's offensive line, which we'll get to in a couple days, is as good as I think it can be, I mean, this is where the offense has a big advantage over an Ohio State offense. Ohio State's offense is second to none as we've seen it. But Michigan's offense could be better, not just because they have skill positions, but because you do have that mixed with the run game, the offensive line, and it really could be a situation where it's not just being pass happy, it's not just being run happy. It really is kind of like you choose if you want to load up the box to try to stop the run, we're going to throw all over you, and vice versa. Nothing you're going to be able to really just be able to defend. I really think that this offense should be the Michigan's best. And I think that a lot of it has to do with the wide receivers, but the fact that we've already talked about the running backs. Now we're talking about the wide receivers, and then you've got the tight ends and the offensive line, and you have the quarterback. I mean, it's a loaded offense, and it's going to be really exciting. Tight ends, that's going to be what we're going to get to on Wednesday. So that one, obviously, we're going to go a little bit more in depth on each guy because we can. Oh, maybe we won't, because I mean, again, it's a very loaded room, right? We're going to be talking about Eric All, Luke Schoonmaker, Matthew Hibner, Louis Hansen, Colston Loveland. Most of these, some of these guys we've seen, some of them we haven't. They're adding Marlon Klein. It's a pretty crazy room as well. So we'll get to that on Wednesday. Anyway, that'll do it for today. Thank you for watching and or listening. We will talk to you soon. Peace.